I had to sit by myself the whole panel. I feel like I'm part of the group now.
As you're a lawyer, I don't violate it. If I photocopy it, I won't violate it.
Bill, Heather, and I had coordinated a similar talk for the Charleston Libraries Conference, and we felt it was very important to get actual end users, people who are interfacing with the students, people who are selecting the content for these courses, to get in front of the librarians back then to make sure that we were all on the same page. Because we sit in a pretty unique spot where we work within a lot of different stakeholder groups, and often we'd hear from the librarians, well, this is what's happening here, and then we'd hear from the faculty, this is what they're doing, and we'd hear from the publishers, well, this is what I assume they're doing, and none of those stories ever matched. So, for us, it was really important to get people talking to each other to make sure, because if we're trying to service everybody and everyone has a different picture of what's going on, nothing's really going to get done. So, we thought it was very important, just the way that we presented, this kind of direct feedback panel to the librarians. It was really important to get the same opportunity to talk to the publishers about this too. And I think you can already see, we didn't do this on purpose, aside from saying, well, maybe we should get a scientist and a historian and like a humanities as well. We didn't, try to cobble together who does digital and who does print. And I think you pick any three faculty across any three campuses, and you're going to get completely different ways. And that's one of the blessings and the challenges of being in the positions that we are. So my role in this boot camp is to share some of the behaviors that we've observed from what happens after the content selection phase happens. From a course materials platform perspective, and particularly because of the way that our technology service is structured, we're, as I said, we're uniquely positioned, and we sit in the middle of a very big ecosystem. So, on one hand, we work with producers of content, the creators, the publishers. We work with copyright agencies as well. We work with people who do it for pay and people who do it as public sources and open educational resources, the schools, the libraries, the bookstores, and we make sure that all of this interacts together. I'll go into how we see the content being delivered from that unique position that we sit in, how we see it being delivered out to the students, and this is across a general scope as well. So we see a wide range of different schools, different types of courses coming in, and we can speak specifically to, how it is that the content is being delivered out, and how we see students engaging with that content as well. Because the picture doesn't stop with the content being selected. In order for us to really affect the end story, which is let's help students achieve success, because that's the goal of teaching and learning, we have to make sure that the students are the true end users, and they're getting the benefit out of this as well. So for those in the audience who may not be familiar with CIPICS, we were an interdisciplinary research project at Stanford. So we were half computer science department and we were half law school, a natural marriage. And we were charged with using technology to fix a lot of the copyright problems that we felt ourselves on campus, because we were professors and we were students and we were researchers, and we were running across a lot of different questions about, well, what do I have access to use, and what am I allowed to do with this content, and how much does it cost, and does the school already have a subscription to it, is it already paid for? So a lot of this stuff was very confusing for your average faculty to understand. And we found a lot of inefficiencies happening across the board as well, because a lot of the information that's needed to answer those problems and those questions was siloed in certain groups, not intentionally, but just because they weren't networking together at all. So we looked at what we could automate within this, and it would be stuff that was fairly simple as a problem. The bookstores are selling course materials, but they have no way to recognize what the library is already subscribed to. Let's connect that information together. So we built a prototype. We ran a number of test courses at Stanford through that prototype, just to see, as part of our research, what the effect would be. And from a cost standpoint, much, much lower. Like at Stanford, but Stanford does have large subscriptions. We saw reductions between 25 to 80% for students. Right, so obviously this gains popularity. We saw that professors were updating more often because it was much easier for them to update now. We saw that the analytics that come out of a database solution like ours was able to generate a lot of new insight, not just for teaching, but also for the content producers and for the libraries who are trying to collect together a relevant collection. So we ran a lot of courses through this, and it got to the stage where we had other schools starting to ask about the system. So Stanford, about a year and a half ago, told us, you've grown up enough, and you're going to have to push out and be a commercial service now. So that's where we've come to. So we are a web service. It's cloud-based. And really, we manage to distribute and measure course materials. And what that means is we help with the rights piece, and the rights is not just about making payment for something, but also recognizing when it's already subscribed material and making sure it pushes through those channels to show that subscription usage and leverage the subscription dollars that the schools are spending. We make sure that we are measuring, the output as well. We make sure that we are able to connect into all of the different tools that faculty and all the different mechanisms that faculty are using right now to be able to push that stuff forward. So at a base level, one of our mantras was meet the instructors where they are. Don't force them to go in and learn another platform. So our tool actually embeds inside the existing tools that they are using. So it could be a learning management system like Blackboard, where as you're loading up your content, there's a button that connects you in, and you don't have to go externally to look something up. We also want to make it easy for them. People naturally know how to do a web search these days. Like, tell me what you're looking for, and let me do the rest for you. So they come in, they enter, what's the title that you're looking for in the box. They find the CIPICS database draws together all the different results from all those different places we connect to, presents it to them. They make a selection for the result, and then the system itself creates a copyright intelligent link, a URL that can embed into whatever output format they want to connect to their students. So in this case, what you're seeing on the left is our search screen. Just tell us what you're looking for, search for it, and select it. We've put in some new bells and whistles along the way, so, in understanding how it is that, for example, in a learning management system space, professors are pushing materials out there. Sometimes they have a PDF copy, and as much as the librarians try to encourage them to use links, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But let's take away those manual elements from them. Make it easier for people to use the tools that are bringing these benefits forward and to be compliant. So we have publishers that we work with that will connect their data into our system, and that takes away the whole upload question. We make sure that everybody has the information they need. So when you're a faculty member, you can't really see the text here because it's so small, but on the left side, you see what the faculty see, right? They see, this is the article I'm looking for. They see how much it's going to cost each student. They see right away whether or not the library already subscribes to it. So key pieces of information from what you've heard, these are the factors. I've decided that this article is relevant as a faculty member. I want to know how much it costs my student. I can make a determination of whether or not it's worth it to send that out. The students also see the same thing. So the students need to start recognizing a little bit of this is copyright education for students as well. And they need to start to recognize that, this is content that's high quality and there's value associated with it, and sometimes that content is brought to them by other channels. So they'll see on the right-hand side the student experience of clicking that link wherever that link is posted by the professor, and they'll see this is the article you want, this is how much it usually costs, and if it's free to you because your library bought you a subscription, then you can get it right away and it's free. So what we do see is these links being so flexible spread across a multitude of ways. And we haven't really tried to limit the way schools can use our system in teaching and learning. We look at what they're doing and we learn from that. So we see sometimes the libraries offer e-reserve services or course reserve services where they're doing this work for faculty. We see it being used in distance learning contexts. We see it in learning management systems and continuing studies courses where you may have a mix of different students coming in, where you have some that are perhaps, matriculated students that should get subscription benefits, and some that are just external to your school, but they paid their $200 to take that continuing studies course that need to make their own payment for materials. So you want to make sure that the system is able to recognize all sorts of different contexts coming into a course. Bookstores, a traditional method of pushing materials out there, also starting to trend into digital materials. MOOCs, online, open courses, all sorts of different models popping up on that. And then we call it a la carte, because we've just seen a lot of new types of initiatives that don't really fit in a category yet, because these are kind of one-offs. So we've seen a wide range. Like when you make it easy for professors to do what they feel is going to work for their students, you will be able to get a lot more interplay inside of this space. So, and again, it's a link. So each reading is a URL, and that URL can be pushed back inside of a learning management system. A faculty, we've had a lot of faculty use it on their own wikis and blogs. At the Charleston conference, we had a faculty member who used a combination of LMS and his own blog in teaching his students, because he felt that one was functional and they could get this kind of experience there, but he really when he wanted them to get creative, he pushed them to the blog and really had them participate in a wiki kind of session. I hesitate to use the word trend, so I'll air quote it for now, but we do know that online education is growing, and some ways you can measure this is the amount of investment that schools are willing to make in online learning projects. So we do know that it's visible, it's highly visible right now to university leaderships, how to make them positioned to be ready to adapt, from an online or from an on-campus bricks and mortar teaching environment to an online environment where you might have students that are, going to the fridge to get a glass of orange juice, or just very different teaching styles. How do you engage them where you don't have them trapped in a classroom for 60 minutes, 3 hours? How do you create assets that can be reused in online formats as well? So there's a lot of research and investment going into this space, which means that there's a lot of content complexity that's also happening. Part of the complexity is because we don't know what all of these future assets are. But we know we need to bring in technologies that can support the underlying projects going on right now. And at least in the MOOCs, we're able to, I think I'm pretty confident on this, we're probably the leading content provider in MOOC courses right now. And I would use MOOCs as a proxy for that kind of online learning experimentation that we're seeing. Maybe the media hype is coming down on MOOCs, Coursera, edX being the next great thing, and everybody's going to go to free education. I think a lot of schools are still investing in this experiment because they want to see what works, teach themselves how to adapt to online, and what we already see happening is the next gen, what's happening out of these early MOOCs emerging. People are, and when I say people, schools are extracting what they feel are the successful components out of these MOOCs, and they're reapplying them in different contexts. It could be, I've seen some people do it in TV broadcast. They reuse the video lectures in that kind of environment. I've seen them redo it where they take the lecture videos and the readings and the assignments that go along with that course and repurpose that as a distance learning course that they can create sustainability from. So there's all sorts of things happening here. And one of the really exciting things I see happening is that a lot of the faculty are getting involved and starting to find ways to almost create their own level of sustainability within MOOCs and possibly further. So things like instructor-generated materials, where the instructor or the school is repackaging their course notes and offering them for purchase at a low rate to the MOOC class. It's been a way for the students to be a little bit more committed. You have a MOOC environment where all your learners are voluntary. They're not really doing this, the vast majority of them are not doing it for credit, or they're not doing it because they've got a 4-year degree and tuition, pot invested in. They're doing it because they want a deeper understanding of the subject matter. So, these have been little things that the faculty have done to try to get their students to be a little more committed. So a $5 course notes package means that your student is now a little more invested in their course. They have a legacy product to draw away. We've seen publishers participate here as well. A lot of them have assigned readings that go into those courses, so they've allowed excerpts to be used within the course notes as well. It draws visibility to the students taking this course. If they want to read further into more of the content, they can buy the whole article. I think, and I've heard of some of the publishers talking about this too, I think it's a great opportunity for acquisitions. You know that this is a topic that's of interest. It's proven 1 run, 2 run, 3 runs of a MOOC audience already. And it is a brand new market of users. You are dealing with global, non-affiliated academic users now, which is something that in a bricks and mortar campus context has been pretty unattainable. I mixed up my slide. So when we're talking about the global market, we're talking about, this is just aggregated stats from the Civics platform. Across, we took out US and Canada because they spike so high that it makes it impossible to make a slide. But they do account, US and Canada right now accounts for more than 50% of our usage. And these are the top 40 countries of what we see students doing afterwards. And whether it's a campus course or a MOOC course, we do see there's engagement. Like in terms of proportion, because you have 50,000 student classes, the proportion of students are smaller in a MOOC class, but the volume is usually higher than you would get just because of the sheer size of that enrollment. So what we see here are a snapshot into what it is that you can understand about student users. So the purple represents the purchased items for a cost that were available to that student in that particular course that they bought, and the red were the ones that were made available to them for free. Some publishers participate with us for free just to see the data that comes out of it. So depending on the country we're talking about, so for example, Nigeria, Pakistan, those are primarily, you see maybe like one little line of purple purchase material on the top, and everything else is red, because this is usage, this is a price point that this particular country could not afford. That's one theory. Right. There's a lot you can draw out of this. I think there's a lot of different questions you can ask yourself. So when you see something like that, when you see there's a total market here, and when you see, and this is a bit of my copyright background, I used to do a lot of copyright policy work where we worked with economists. When you see that's your market, and you see that you're outpricing yourself from what your market can afford, you can readjust your price and see if you can make the price point more cost accessible, especially for developing nations, and you can open up and expand your usage within that particular channel. This was information that our early publishers used in the MOOCs to be able to start thinking about how you can price. Right, so when you have a system that is database driven, you can actually set one price per country for this if you want, which is a lot of work. We understand that. With different data points coming into play, I mean, you could probably get cartridges like software industries and other industries use to kind of plug and play as you go. But for right now, what we do is we see a lot of the publishers recognizing the fact that they're not doing themselves any favors by pricing at one price point. And they've divided their pricing into a bifurcated model where you have a huge discount for developing nations and you have developed nations price points, right? And a lot of what we do on our system is to be able to help publishers understand, well, this is what happened before, this is what happened after. Let's keep adjusting if you want. You can experiment with your own pricing on our system until you find what works for you. So it's important to have those contextual analytics and look at, because when we see the students coming in engaging with the content that the faculty have decided are important for them, then at the end of the day, it really is about helping to make sure that we do have that level of student success. Right? So using the analytics and making sure that the educator gets the same kind of information to see when their students are engaging. We've seen, for campus courses, there's usually a big intake at the front, and then right before exams or quizzes have been announced, there's another little spike of usage. With the MOOCs, we see a really big, there's a peak that happens at the beginning, and then it kind of tails off in a really long tail. For the libraries, again, it's about understanding, well, what are my constituents using, right? Not just what subscribed information is it that they're using, but what non-subscribed information are they asking for that I need to go out and get as well. For publishers, it's about making sure that you understand, these are the markets you're working in now, these are how they perform, and to also understand what the comparables in your space are. In a class, we have, if you look at the graph on the right, in a class we have, for example, 10 readings that are selected, right, to understand, and they're all selected for different reasons, and there are different characteristics for why one might outperform another, but at least to know what the performance levels are like when you break it down by cost usage, right? Why is it that the free stuff or the dollar stuff performs so well when the $10 plus articles sell 2 copies in that class instead of 20, right? If there's an irregularity, if there's a spike, let's identify what that is and what caused it. Is it because, like in this case, that was the course notes that the professor offered within his readings? Right? That was really important for the students to connect with that. We understand, just based on usage data, that spoke really well to the students and they engaged. We can do so much with that. As an educator, you can take that information and you can maybe put more information in there for what you think they need to take away, or you can reposition messaging around it. Some of the things, and I think it's stuff that you guys have talked about as well, some of the things that we've been thinking of and what we can build out of the usage data on this is recommendation engines. Knowing as an educator what, you're selecting a particular article, what other articles were used in courses that also selected this article, right? Helping figure out what these irregularities are that show student engagement, combining with other platforms to be able to measure and track, well, what are the characteristics that help drive student success as well. So there's all sorts of different factors and metrics at play. I don't want to say that we know exactly what's going to happen there yet, but I think we're all moving in the right direction if we all work together and make it easier to be able to measure these things and use the information well. Do we have, should we just, let me stop here then.